We are so happy to welcome Padma Shri Dr. Neelam Mansingh to IFTS interview series. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I am delighted to be here.
I'm quite curious to know about your practice and your work and your teaching experiences in this session. Could you please start from the beginning after your graduation and when you went back to Punjab and you started working the Punjabi culture in your work and the aesthetics that you work in your theatre? Could you please start from that point?
Sure. When I graduated from the National School of Drama, I got married and I shifted to Bombay. So in Bombay, I was doing little bits and pieces of work with a lot of actors who had graduated before me, my seniors. And we all formed a group together called Matthai, where we did plays at Prithvi Theatre and other places. Prithvi Theatre had just come up. Then my husband got posted to Bhopal, and it was one of the most miraculous 5 years of my life. Because in Bhopal, they were setting up a new repertory in a cultural complex called Aranattukara. And they invited B.V. Karan, who is from Karnataka, very eminent director and wonderful museologist, as the director of the Rang Mandal, a state repertory that was formed there. So I got a job in the repertory, not because I had any achievements to my credit, but they just felt that somebody from the NST, a student of Ibrahim Al-Ghazi, would have some value. So I joined working in Bharat Bhavan in this repertory. And I worked there for 5 years, and it was a very special period. I observed, I learned. Just to give you a little contrast, Al-Ghazi was a Renaissance man. You know, he had an approach to theatre methodology which came from Stanislavski and Meyerhold and Wattenkopf, while Karan was more a people's person. He was local, he was vernacular, he was regional. So we did a lot of experiments in what kind of training to give the actors. He did the experiments, I listened, and I facilitated it. So we had this interaction between traditional artists and urban actors from Madhya Pradesh. And what happens when two groups of people from separate worlds meet? What kind of combustion do they create? Does something happen which is intangible? Who learns from whom? How does transformation take place? So some wonderful things were happening. It's not that it was only happening in Bhopal. Similar experiments were being done by, as you know, Panikar in Kerala, who worked with the Chakyas, and he did Sanskrit plays, and the whole approach was very contemporary. Ratan Thiyam was doing it in Manipur. So these kind of, I think there was an urgency in most Indian directors of a certain age that we have to find something which is in our own indigenous culture as training tools for the actor. And then my husband got a transfer to Chandigarh. And I was so unhappy because it was such a perfect place to be in. Endless money, beautiful rehearsal spaces, a great colleague as B.V. Karan. Though I didn't see him as a colleague, I saw him as a guru, a teacher. I hate using the word guru, but you know, as somebody who I observed and watched and recognized like a mentor. And then in Chandigarh, when I moved to Chandigarh, he said, whatever work you do must be in the regional language. I had stayed away from my own state for so many years, for my NST, then Bombay, then Bhopal, then my early childhood was spent in London because my father was working there. So I was very cut off from what you call regionalism, local energies, even the language. I didn't even speak the language. It was spoken in the house, but we went to convent schools and felt very anglicized, you know. So there was a certain artificial space which we had created in our imagination about the life we were leading and the life we wished to lead. And then when I came to Punjab and Karanji said, you must work in your regional language. And because I respected and admired and the 5 years that I spent with him and the 3 years at the NST became a wonderful combination of method acting, detailing, composition, discipline, many questions that are very necessary to run a theatre company. And B.V. Karan was celebrated, there was music, there was Ronak, there was a lot of fun that was happening during rehearsal. So these two combinations became very powerful experiences for me. And then I moved to Chandigarh and I cobbled together a group. I tried to learn the language, because language is not only sound or spoken word, it's also cultural imagery, it's also idiomatic language, it is history, it is hundreds of things. It's an aesthetics, it's a sound, it's a choice of words. So then I came across one of the leading poets in Punjab called Surjit Patil. He's like iconic, it's like the poets of your state, who become like great figures of admiration. So I loved his poetry. I just loved the sound of poetry because I felt that's the kind of Punjabi I want in my play. So I contacted him. He actually came. And I just persuaded him that you must translate Nagamandala. The first play he did with me was Nagamandala. Now he was used to a realistic form of working. And he could understand this whole snake myth. But I told him, then he thought, like he tells me, that I thought that's not my problem, that's a problem of the director, how she deals with those issues. But he couldn't figure out this kind of writing. He could understand realism, he could understand social issues, but his language was so superb. I'll stop him for a moment and tell you that because of the work I'd done in Bhopal, where we were looking for an idiom to train actors, so B.V. Karan started contacting the local traditional forms that existed in Madhya Pradesh. Rai Baredi, Nacha tradition, which Habib Saab took to great heights. So we started creating this combination of tradition and modernity. So in that whole process, to jump forward, when I came to Chandigarh, I started working with a group of traditional performers called the Nakals.
Yeah, the female fingers.
Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly. Now the Nakals, the word Nakal means to imitate. They don't have a continuous tradition like yesterday when we went to Kalamandalam. It was, I felt I wanted to fall on my feet and kiss the soil. I was so overwhelmed and I felt I was part of something so spectacular, so special, so ancient, part of a common civilization. Yet the people there, the registrar, the chancellor, the vice chancellor, they have such an open attitude that tradition is not some museum piece, but it's a living part interacting with life. I'm just talking to them was a revelation for me. So this was what I saw in Karan's work also. And then I tried to use the same way of exploring text. I took text which was classical text. I took text Federico Garcia Lorca's, Yarma, Blood Wedding, Nagamandala, Fedra by Jodassin. So I took Tagore, did a lot of work with Sadat Hassan Monmouth. So I explored different texts, and my traditional performers did not become like some exotica. They became part of the group. To see if two groups of people coming from separate worlds could make theatre together. They had their own skills tools, toolbox of skills. And actors who do city theatre, they come with their own tools. And as you very rightly pointed out, working with female impersonators was a big challenge for me. Because I wanted to see how gender is constructed on stage. Is it an act of biology? Is it performative? Do we do a casting according to gender, or do we do casting in terms, is gender one part of the character?
The physicality.
Exactly. So that's been my work. So the aesthetics is, I think, the aesthetics is really what I see around me. And we are in a seminar on ecology and theatre, and but most of the tools that I use, most of the things I use in my play are mud, water, fire, what is easily available. I don't use synthetic stuff. I don't have synthetic costumes. I don't use plastic.
So, how the music tradition or the oral tradition or the voice of this Punjabi culture that resonates in your work?
Well, I think the language itself becomes what brings in the other elements, because my work is very much as a 21st century woman. Even my interpretation of women is not like I did Hai Vadana recently. If you're familiar with the text, in the end, she commits sati and they die in a duel. And I thought, you're talking about a woman's desire, which is anyway such a unusual phenomena when Girish Karnad wrote the play in the 70s. And then you create sati at the end. So to me it was a little bit problematic. So I changed it around. So I work with, for me they are a group of actors coming from a different world. And these are group of actors who come from a different world. They all bring their toolbox and how I create a cohesive working methodology with them.
So when you work with people outside your region or your familiar, regular working space, like when you work with our MTS students, you are directing Tamasha recently. So how was your interaction with this generation of student actors?
You know, it was one of the most joyous experiences I've had. There were 4 actors and 1 stage manager. Nobody spoke each other's language. But you find other ways of communicating. I think language is one of the aspects through which you connect with an audience or with a person. There's a body movement, there's gestures, there's sound, there are emotions. You can make out that the emotions are real, no matter which language. Emotions have no language. The body has no language. The body universally, images have no language. You create a narrative through what you see. So it was, they were wonderful actors. It took a while. It took some time for them to understand my way of working. It took me time to understand where their talents lay. But they were so curious, so open, so respectful. They surrendered completely. They were just, for me it was really magical that 1 month. I don't know what it was for them, but I fell in love with all of them.
So when you see the group of theatre lovers, theatre students who are passionate to work in theatre and art world, what do you see? What you see in their future? Like when you interact with these talents right now here in IFTS, what do you see their future?
Well, I'm not a prophet that I can predict the future or an astrologer. It's basically to do with continuously chiseling your tools. Your talent is raw material. You have to nurture it, you have to make it grow, you've got to read a lot, you've got to see a lot, you've got to listen, you've got to understand silences, you've got to observe. There are hundreds of things that are a continuous training process, because we as actors who are doing contemporary work have no toolbox. If you're a Kudiyattam artist or Kathakali artist, then you have a codified tradition. There's a training vocabulary. Here we have no training vocabularies. A good director is as good as a bad director. There's no discerning one from the other. So there's so much self-training that goes into it. Through exposure, through learning, through training, through curiosity. It's a complex question because there is no guarantees, there are no certainties. But you have to have, it's like Anne Bogart says, there are three things you need. You need a story to tell, you need technique, and you need passion. So technique and craft is sandwiched between passion and storytelling. So you've got to train yourself.
In the context of pedagogy, as a professor who wish to inculcate in the academic background of theatre, what is your suggestion in the world of theatre pedagogy?
Well, I hate giving suggestions because it sounds like I'm some kind of a, or in a superior position. But I do feel that in a certain way, pedagogy informs practice and practice informs pedagogy. If you're a practitioner, then the way you view pedagogy will be quite different from somebody who's an academician.
So I think that's what I have to ask her. This is such an eye-opening moment for me to think about how she think about and how she has worked in her experience of theatre field. So we are so thankful for your time with us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful speaking to you.